clear when I'm speaking my mind. Let me be clear when I'm stating my side. Let me be clear when I say that I mean all my words, so you know that I don't plan to lie. Let me be clear, I don't care if I get on get nerves, you will not push my words to the side. I'ma be clear when I tell you I've been on a mission, I got good intentions inside. Let me be clear, let me be clear, let me be clear, I don't need you to ride. Let me be clear, let me be clear, let me be clear, that you won't keep me quiet. Let me be clear, let me be clear.
Hey y'all.
Hey guys.
Welcome to this week's episode of Let's Be Clear with Janika and Doc.
How y'all doing?
Hopefully your Thanksgiving was peaceful. Hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed, right?
Right. So let's get going. There's some tomfoolery and some fraganackle bull going on. Lila, I'm closing my eyes and talking. Y'all know when I do that. Some fraganackle bull and tomfoolery going on. So let's start with the latest round, the latest episode of Fraganackle Bull, the ongoing saga, the ever-evolving, changing dynamic,
the R. Kelly saga
with R. Kelly. So one of his last remaining or notable, I don't know who else he has,
the remnant few, y'all.
But the one that we can identify with at this point, not Miss Azriel, Miss Jocelyn Savage, came out, y'all, a couple weeks ago, just before Thanksgiving, saying that she wanted to tell her own story, finally. I don't know what prompted this, but she came out wanting to do a disclosure. And initially, she was going to do it on this site called Patreon.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Patreon, but they took the account down because there were concerns about them not being able to verify her identity and concerns that maybe the account was hacked, which, by the way, folks have to subscribe and pay. So now there are other concerns that Miss Jocelyn is on somewhat of a money grab by telling her story on Instagram now through her stories.
Makes sense. And
YouTube. Also, she has all kind of online dating advertisements coming up as well. Advertisements, yes. So, I just don't know.
I just can't. Like, girl, really though. You sat there with Gail and y'all defended him and I'm not a victim. But now you're coming out, I'm a victim. So which one is it?
I just kind of feel like you guys, we have to be careful with our voice, because if we want our voices to be heard and to be respected, we've got to articulate and present our voices in a certain way to not play ourselves out of position. And I'm just kind of disappointed that if this is her truth and if this was how she was going to tell her story, to me, telling it on Instagram and some of these other sites somehow cheapens it and calls into question the truthfulness here.
Right. And then part of it is she talks about how I'm a victim and I didn't realize it because all my needs were being met, and kind of the slow...
the seduction, the grooming, that perpetrators.
And in terms of, is this about finances, right? We all know that R. Kelly ain't got no money left. Between the lawyers and I think someone else paid his child support or something to get him out one time from jail. Like, you sat there talking about how much you love him and this, that, and the third. Now you're a victim. No, it's not about money. So what's the motivation? Because you dogged your parents out on TV saying that they wanted money. So I'm confused.
Yeah, I'm just kind of spent by all of it, especially in this Me Too movement age that we're living in. Again, you guys, we've got to be careful with how we represent ourselves and not minimizing any potential trauma, psychological, emotional trauma that Jocelyn alleges to have endured. And so sometimes when we haven't gone through things, that impacts our thinking, our judgment, our decision making. So I'm not minimizing that, but to me, we have, Surviving R. Kelly at the top of the year. This, in my opinion, well executed documentary. It looked very purposeful, very production wise,
it's very intentional.
it was
the way
very
it was done.
intentional and very well coordinated and put together.
It wasn't thrown together.
So if this is what we have potentially, and now you come 10, 11 months later with Instagram stories and Patreon, I'm just like, how are you doing honor to yourself at this point? How is that honoring yourself and what you have gone through and what you have survived?
To me, it cheapens your testimony.
Bingo.
And as someone who always wants to believe women and always wants to believe victims, it makes it very difficult. And granted, we are talking about R. Kelly, so it doesn't make it difficult, but it makes it difficult in the sense of it makes it hard to go to bat for the next one, right? Like, how do you know someone's not gonna flip the script on you? And you're sitting here going to bat for someone or trying to help. Oh, I'm not a victim. I'm not a victim. Oh, okay. Next, I'm a victim, and you're like, so what response do you want?
Right, and I guess related to that, what are you hoping for, Jocelyn? Through, okay, you finally ready to come forward. That is what it is. Everybody does things in their own time, but how you're choosing to come forward.
Right.
What are you hoping? I don't know, y'all. What y'all think? What are y'all hoping? What are you hoping, or what do you think Jocelyn is expecting from coming forward in this way and the telling of her story? Because the blogs are saying, y'all, this ain't nothing but a money grab.
Because it seems that way, right? You sat down with Gail, and granted, afterwards you could hear Gail talking about after the interview how his staff was kind of lurking behind. He was kind of lurking behind the scenes and intimidating and yada yada. But I don't know if this is really about getting your testimony out, your story out, and your narrative and being heard. There are other more validated ways to do it.
I guess I would have, if we want to do medium, The Breakfast Club with Charlamagne the God and
Even
Angela
that's more validated.
Yee and DJ Envy. Everybody knows The Breakfast Club. Right. Steve Harvey. Can we go V103 with my boy Frank Ski, who used to be in Be More? Can we do that? Can we do Ricky Smiley? Maybe go back on Gayle King, CBS This Morning.
You can reach out to Gail.
So many different other ways. Even Tamron Hall.
She would have loved this story.
Anybody
would love this story. You went on a paid social media site to do this.
Of all the medium.
And then the thing with what's it called? Patreon?
Yes.
That my understanding of that is that if people want your story, they pay to
Yes, a paid subscription. Yes.
Girl. No. First of all, you already had your time to tell your story, so no one's now going to pay to hear your story. Who do you think you are? Your story is, we all know about R. Kelly. This ain't new to nobody. So to now think that what you have is that valuable. We want you to heal.
Yes.
So we like to hear your story, but it just looks way too
contrived. It looks
suspicious.
Convenient. Yeah.
Contrived. It looks shady.
Yeah.
Do you, boo, but don't expect people to buy.
What do y'all think about this? Because I know when I saw it a couple weeks ago, I was like, say what now? Although, when you're dealing with Venus and Mars as planets, you can't expect Earth-like behavior. So in other words, we're dealing with some far out allegations and behaviors. So we can't expect, quote unquote, typical normal behavior to result from these allegations. So I get that, right? So, but
still,
I'm just,
y'all.
All these journalists, all these media personalities, celebrities.
You can go on The View. You couldn't do none of that. And
is Barbara Walters still living? Because you couldn't do a Barbara Walters special.
She's still living.
I mean, everybody used to love Barbara Walters. We had Whitney Houston. We had everybody. Diana Ross. Everybody. Barbara Walters. I bet you she would have come out retirement for this. Seriously. We have all these journalists, all these reputable folks that I just think would have honored the sharing of your testimony and not cheapened it.
Yeah. I think it was disappointing.
Yes.
Very disappointing in you.
Yes. So I don't know, y'all. Did y'all even pay attention to that, or
did y'all just roll your eyes,
or y'all just roll your eyes and just be like, "Here we go again"? Like, did it surprise you? Did it not surprise you? Did you pay attention to it?
Just like next,
literally, because I'm just kind of like, okay. And meanwhile, while Miss Jocelyn has been sharing her story, Miss Azriel, allegedly R. Kelly's other girlfriend, you know, the little sister that was in the Gayle King interview,
the angry one.
She was incensed, honey. Had a show of righteous indignation.
Didn't she? What you mad for?
Miss Azriel has been quiet as a church mouse while Miss Jocelyn has been coming forward. And so, again, folks, let us know what you think. What you think, Janika?
Well, I'm curious how this is going to play out because she also has a non-disclosure agreement. So how does that play?
That she has just violated.
You violated non-disclosure. So and the way you went about this, you know, it's not like you went through a journalist. You went on social media. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, does that impact this at all? Like, how does...
Particularly if there are criminal allegations. We're not attorneys, but at what point does criminal allegations override an NDA?
Right.
A non-disclosure agreement.
Right, because he already has, I think, 11 counts of sexual misconduct. So what you're alleging, is that going to be added as extra counts? Right. So does the NDA not count since it's...
We'll see.
Anyway, on to the next.
All right, y'all. So let's talk a little bit about politics. Let's get serious even more serious for a moment.
So give me a headache.
This is what we came for. So Miss Harris, my soror Kamala, just announced yesterday that she dropped out. She dropped her bid. She dropped out of the presidential campaign. And so, but let's back up some. I don't know how many of y'all are familiar with The Root. So The Root is this online Black news outlet. And they talk about pop culture, politics, race, all that stuff. And Michael Harriot, a webologist baby, he is the senior writer with The Root, and I love him.
He's good.
This man, what he does with prose, honey, or words and writing. See, I got my little $10 words. What he does with that is amazing. And so...
You'd hope, right?
Right. He came out with this article.
It was good, y'all.
Against presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg, who is the mayor of South Bend, Indiana since 2012, calling him a lying MFer. And let me tell you what prompted Mr. Harriot to call, and I'm saying MFer, but he said the whole thing. So let me tell you why Mr. Harriot said that. Pete Buttigieg, from his campaign when he was initially running in 2011, said, and I quote, "Kids need to see evidence that education is going to work for them. You're motivated because you believe that at the end of your education, there is a reward. There's a stable life, there's a job. And there are a lot of kids, especially in the lower income minority neighborhoods, who literally just haven't seen it work. There isn't someone who they know personally who testifies to the value of education. And for that, Mr. Harriot said, you a lying mother, shut your mouth."
Oh, he went in.
I mean, he and within that, this article was published initially on November 25th in The Root. Mm-hmm. And then Mr. Buttigieg calls Mr. Harriot a few days after that. Did you know that they had this conversation?
Mm-mm.
Pete Buttigieg, oh yes, because Mr. Harriot, honey, this article went viral. I need y'all to look it up. And so Mr. Buttigieg calls Mr. Harriot a few days later, and they talked, and Mr. Harriot insisted that for Mr. Buttigieg and other candidates and other politicians, he challenged them by saying, you just can't make statements like that without acknowledging who broke it and who refuses to fix it. So Mr. Harriot's point is, Mr. Buttigieg, pretty much, that's mighty white of you and other politicians to make such a statement without really acknowledging how the system got broke, and the way in which you and your whiteness and privilege continue to benefit from this racist system. You know, it's like blaming victims for the consequences of systemic racism.
Right, because he goes on to say in his article that, you know, you're very lucky. Your parents worked for very prestigious institutions. So you came from a family where you had access to these resources, right? So, and he kind of makes this analogy where growing up, you kind of have to leap over this one.
He had this literal,
right,
almost bridge he had to go through every day to get to school,
and not really a bridge, but like there's a board over.
The board became a bridge, so to speak, because it was like deep water, and either he went over that, which was very unsteady, or walked the extra half an hour around it, which could have been even more inconveniencing, or just had the efforts, said F it.
And don't go. So you walk this tiny grit, this little board, right? So and you might fall, you might not, but you take the chance because what's on the other side is worth it. So to sit there and say that kids in these communities don't know the value or don't see the value is very erroneous, and it's an unfair statement to say when you don't know. It's
you know what, y'all, bottom line is I'm gonna disagree with you, Janika. I think these politicians actually know. Let's kill the nice euphemisms, okay, with not a lot of role models and all that. Yes, that's true. There may be there are a lot of at-risk people in these communities, but to Mr. Harriet's point, which I get so frustrated when I see these politicians do this every election year, and us folks of color fall for it. They come into our communities, do this show at the barber shops and at the churches. They want to give a surface level commitment.
They pander
without really getting underneath of it. And the point is, y'all, check it out. In order for them to really get underneath of it, that means that some of their privilege, they've gotta let that go, and that's the real issue here.
But what I'm saying is, don't sit here and pander to a community that you know nothing about.
You know what?
Because you choose not to.
Bingo.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, that's convenient.
You choose not to. It's a convenient.
That's convenient
it's a willing
ignorance.
It's
willing.
willing.
Because I think some of these folks do know, but in order to really kind of, and I was reading something yesterday, because I'm working on this other publication, and so I was reading something yesterday, and they said in terms of the biblical narrative with slavery, and how the Bible was misquoted and bastardized a lot, in my opinion. And the Declaration of Independence. You cannot say that all men are created equal, hold that as a truth, but then hold slavery together. And so some of this comes with a willing ignorance, and a willful blind eye that you turn. And for me, y'all, in this election year, let's stop falling for the okie doke. Let's really prompt these people and challenge these folks to really kind of put their money where their mouth is. And let's not be fooled by the fact that just because someone may look like us on the surface, that they may actually be willing to kind of do more for us than maybe someone of a different race or color would. And let's not assume on the opposite end that just because somebody is white or comes from a different racial or ethnic background, that they may not go to bat for us. So in other words, let's really kind of challenge people to put their money where their mouth is. I'm tired of this. Now, again, back to Mr. Buttigieg. I looked it up, y'all. I YouTubed it. You know, University of YouTube, honey, give you everything. Because I wanted to make sure I pronounced his name accurately.
Google certified.
Yes. So, Mr. Buttigieg, I think that was a convenient statement and totally not inaccurate assertion that he made in 2011. Not totally inaccurate, not totally false. I do think that folks need to see people that look like them in certain positions to help them aspire to that. Yes, representation matters, but that's not the end all be all. That's all there is to it. What you just, Janika?
I just can't. I feel like to constantly have that same narrative spinning, at what point do you look outside of yourself as a politician and say, there's more to this. But you're not actually doing the work. You're not actually interested in these communities. You're not actually interested in the people.
No.
I would rather you just don't do that. Right? I would rather you just not pander to the community. Just don't go. Just don't go. Oh, but you want the votes.
So y'all, we got to be more discerning and critical rather with who we give our vote to. For me.
In general, vote.
Yeah.
So there's that. But
outside of that, but I think
research.
we got to be more thoughtful and deliberate, y'all, because we fall for the okie doke every time these politicians come. They make these great promises, sometimes not even a year into their term. Mm-hmm. All these things, wonderful things that they promised, have fallen to the wayside.
I think it's more than just being likable. And I think a lot of people want to rest on that. And as someone who does not like politics, it's very effortful for me to look into and like, okay, let me try to figure this out and try to really understand what they think, or what is at least one issue that they're saying that I can really buy into. Because it has to be more than just being likable, right? Like, you used to like Biden. He really ain't got much for me. Yeah, you might be likable, but what else you got?
Right.
Nothing. You got nothing. And, you know, people like Buttigieg, but I'm not really sure why. But, because he doesn't really have much. So, and yes, representation matters, but what else you got?
Right.
Than looking like me. You got to come with something else. Right. So
right.
do pay attention.
Right.
Listen to them.
Yes.
Don't just say, oh, I like her because she's a soror, or she's black, or he's black, or because whatever the reason. If you like what they're saying and you buy into it, great. Cool. But do your research. Make sure you vote, because it actually matters. We wouldn't be in the position we're in right now with a lot of the foolishness we're dealing with if we all paid attention, if we all voted. And I'm not just saying this to black folks.
Everybody. Now, y'all know who I actually liked, and I'm sitting with bated breath, hoping Stacey Abrams.
I love her.
That lady, I love the cut of her jib, y'all. I love her. Like, that lady is about it. Watch her. Watch her eloquence. Watch her poise. Watch her demeanor. Watch her grit. And, you know, there was some conversation earlier this year when Sora Kamala announced her election. And I said, well, you know, I actually like Stacey Abrams. And so some, you know, had said, you know, Kamala was more palpable in certain ways other than Abrams. Whole other conversation for another time. But actually, the cut of her, the grit, Stacey Abrams, that.
I think in terms of the work that has to be done.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my. And for me, y'all, back to your point, Kamala may seem a little more palpable on the surface in some ways, but look at Stacey Abrams' grit. And so in terms of kind of like what we're getting at, pay attention, y'all. And I think Mr. Harriet really kind of said that for what it was, and he was purposeful. Now, I need y'all to maybe kind of extra layer your eyes a little bit, because he was very heavy with the expletives, but he did that on purpose. Right. Because we're not going to continue to live within these euphemisms, y'all. We're not going to call a slave a servant. No, African people in this country were not servants; they were slaves. Totally different connotation.
Right. There's no indentured servants for us.
Let's just say it for what it is. So in his writing, he did that on purpose.
Right.
And so, you know, Pete Buttigieg called him and he listened.
Did you though? Really, Pete?
So I said, but let that be a note to self, y'all, in terms of our voices. We speak out, and how you speak out.
If nothing else, it's an example of how your voice matters.
Yes.
Right? You write an article where you are passionate and you elicit a very visceral response because of your passion and your conviction. His voice mattered. Got a response. Now, whether or not good old Pete actually heard him, to a degree, I don't think he's willing to hear, right? Because I think that is kind of the gist of the comment that was made.
He benefits from his willful ignorance.
That willful ignorance, and that's what white privilege really refers to. It's a system that you benefit from, so you can make these kinds of assertions and these kinds of statements. However, our voice matters.
Yes.
And the point is to keep speaking up.
Yes.
Because what you're not going to do is silence an entire community.
Yes.
What you're not going to do is silence all of us.
Yes.
Now, there are some people who you feel how you feel, voice it. Perfectly fine. I don't have to agree with you. I may never agree with you, but your voice still matters.
Yeah.
So,
all right, folks. Pay attention.
Speak up.
Stay woke.
Oh, Lord help me.
Look, I didn't mean to overuse that, but seriously. Eyes wide open, please. All right, anything else? All right, y'all. That's it for this week's episode of Let's Be Clear with Janika and Dog. That's it?
Yeah.
You done?
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Be kind to others, but most importantly, be kind to yourselves. Take care. See you next week.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Let me be clear when I'm speaking my mind. Let me be clear when I'm stating my side. Let me be clear when I say that I mean all my words, so you know that I don't plan to lie. Let me be clear, I don't care if I get nerves, you will not push my words to the side. I'ma be clear when I tell you I've been on a mission, I got good intentions inside. Let me be clear, let me be clear, let me be clear. I don't need you to ride. Let me be clear, let me be clear, let me be clear that you won't keep me quiet. Let me be clear, let me be clear, let me be clear. I don't care about the climate. Let me be clear, let me be clear, let me be clear that you all are invited. Let me be clear that I see all the violence getting so bad that it's breaking my silence. We got some leaders that's always been steering us wrong. To be honest, we need a new pilot. You need some help, I ain't talking about sirens. Hope I can bring to your life some new guidance. Lately our world has been constantly going astray. To be real, everybody been wildin'. Once I was asleep, maybe I was just drunk. How did we end up with President Trump? Was he really voted or we out of luck? Did he pay the Russians to give him a bump? Somebody just tell me I really been stuck. I've been banging my head to the point I got lumps. If you justify that, then you cracking me up. If you don't like my work, then I don't give a cluck. Amazon getting wild, I ain't talking about prime. The Brazilian